Welcome to this year's Rosh Hashana Shir. The theme that I want to talk about is Rosh Hashana, the three women who cried. And it's something which I heard, I think it was Rosh Shalom Rosner last year or the year before. And I want to build on some ideas that he presented. And I think it's a very powerful, very beautiful idea that emerges. There are three women that we find, that we refer to, who cried and davened on Rosh Hashana. The first is Sisera. It is well known. We have a minhag, although min Torah, that the requirement to blow shofar is only to blow 9 blows, which is understood because of the sophic exactly what the truas are, that is actually 30 tkiyas. The minhag has emerged over time, over many centuries, that we blow 100 tkiyas, 100 shofar blasts on Rosh Hashanah. Why is that? Because we refer back to the mother of Sisera. The prophetess Devorah noted that Sisera's mother whimpered as she worried over the fate of her son. If you look at the first box on the page, if you're listening online, please email me at j.golker@gmail.com. I'll send you the handout. The pasuk says in Shoftim Perek Hey, Ba'ad hachaloin nishkafa. Through the window, the mother of Sisera looked, Vatiyabev Sisera, and she whimpered, Ba'ad ho'eshnov, she sort of peered through the window. Madua boishesh richboi. Why is his chariot late in coming? Madua echeru pame markavoisov. Why are the strides of his chariots delaying in coming? She was worried. A mother worries for a child. He was out in battle. He's delayed in coming back, and she was worried. Her friends comforted her. The pasuk continues, Chachmei sariseh ta'neha. The wisest of her princesses, her advisors, her friends answer her, Halo yimtzu yechalku shalal. Don't worry, because are they not finding and dividing the spoils? Racham, rachmasayim, l'reish gever, a woman, 2 women for every man. They're dividing the spoils of dyed garments, spoils of embroidery. They're dividing everything up. In other words, he's surely won a very great victory, and he's apportioning the spoils and the captive women among his troops. The Medrash says that she groaned 101 times. And to annul that barbaric perspective, that she could be calmed by the assurance of looting and persecuting innocent victims, we seek to nullify those forces of cruelty by blowing the shofar 100 times. However, she whimpered 101 times. We blow the shofar 100 times and not 101 times because we too feel the pain of a mother who loses a child, even one as loathsome as Sisera. Now, Sisera cries and says that she's coming back. He is coming back. She's created this sort of warped reality of how she sees things. She says it's okay, Beseda, he's successful, he's looting and he's been successful in victory, he's apportioning the spoils and he'll be back soon. She has created this warped sense of reality in her own mind. Rabbi Dr. Norman Lamb used to say that if you live in a dream world, then you have to be prepared for nightmares. Sisera realizes that her son is not coming back. She can't deal with that reality. She changes her perception of it and makes up her own reality that is coming back, that everything's going to be okay. That's one woman who cries on Rosh Hashanah. She creates her own very warped reality. The next person we refer to who cries on Rosh Hashanah is Hagar. If you look at the next box, the pasuk says, Vayashkem Avram ba'boker, we of course learn it on Rosh Hashanah, Vayikach lechem v'chemas mayim vayitin el Hagar som al shichma ves hayeled vayishalcheha. That Avram Avinu sort of disagrees with Sarah. He wants to embrace Yishmael. Sarah says that he's dangerous, he's bad news, he needs to be expelled. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Avram that Tishma lev koila, that listen to Sarah, she's correct. And Avram does that. He gets up early in the morning, he gives Yishmael and Hagar some bread, some water, and dismisses them and sends them away from his home. Vayichlu hamayim and achemes, the pasuk continues, and the water finishes. And then Yishmael takes ill. He becomes sick. But But Hagar can't watch her own son dehydrate and fade away. So she sits far away from him. The far away is sort of the archer's bow, which is quite a distance. She says, I can't see the death of the child. And she sits from a distance and she cries out. Hagar sees reality with clarity. She sees that her son is dying, that her son is dehydrating and dying, but she is paralyzed with fear and she gives up. That is the second response of a woman who cries that we refer to on Rosh Hashana. Aim Sisera creates her own warped reality. Hagar sees her reality with clarity, but she is paralyzed with fear and can't do anything about it. The third person we refer to who cries on Rosh Hashanah is, of course, Rachel. That's the Haftarah of the second day, and it closes with one of the Pesukim of Zichronos, the famous pasuk of Haben Yakir li Ephraim Mielesh Ashrim ki midei dabri boi zocher es keren oid. It's one of the most moving passages in the whole of Tanakh, where Rachel is mevaka al boneh, she cries for her children. Let's go through the Medrash. Let's see this Medrash inside, and we'll see the third response in crying that is perhaps a more useful precedent to us. It says the Medrash, this is on the next side. It's the Medrash in Eicha. Rachel Imenu comes forward and approaches and negotiates, as it were, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'amra. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to send Klal Yisrael into Golus because they've abandoned him, they've started worshipping Avodah Zarah, says Rachel Imenu, Rebbeinu Shalom, Galu lefanecha, sheYaakov avdecha avoni ava Yosera. You know very clearly, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Yaakov Avinu loved me intensely. V'ovad bishvili la'abo sheva shonim, and he worked hard for my father to marry me. And when those 7 years were up, v'higia zman nisui lebaili, and the time for my wedding came, yoatz avi lahachlifeni lebaili bishvil achaisi. My father Lavan wanted to switch me, Rachel, with my sister. V'huksha alai hadova ad moed, and it distressed me enormously, says Rachel. Because I knew about this plot. And I told my husband that this is what my father is attempting to do. And therefore, we tried to foil his plan, and we created a simon, a code, that we would share just the two of us, me, Rachel Imenu, and Yaakov Avinu. That my father wouldn't be able to switch me with my sister. And therefore I comforted myself, but then I realized my sister would be humiliated, and I couldn't tolerate that. And indeed, my father switched Leah with me, and I gave my sister Leah all the simonim that I had given over to my husband Yaakov, so that he would think that I was actually Rachel, when in fact it would be Leah. And I wasn't jealous of her, Leah. And I didn't degrade her and embarrass her in any way. Says Rachel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm flesh and blood, human being. I was not jealous of my co-wife Leah, and I didn't degrade or humiliate her. And you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, are not human, you are everlasting forever. Why should you be jealous of Avodah Zarah, which is empty? And exile my children, that they get killed by the sword and the enemy can do what they want with them. HaKadosh Baruch Hu had Rachmanas. He was overwhelmed with mercy. Because of your tefillahs and your persuasive comments, I'm going to return Klal Yisrael to their place. Hadol Dichsiv. That's why the pasuk says, again, we learned it on the second day, the Haftarah, some of the most beautiful psukim. Kayoma Hashem, Kol Barama Nishma. The voice will come from on high. Nehi b'chis hamrim, Rachel mevaka al boneh. Rachel is crying bitterly for her children. She's refusing to be comforted for her children, for they're not there. Uchsiv, and the pasuk continues, Koyama Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Rachel Imenu, Mini koleich mibechi, stop crying. Ve'inayich midima, and your eyes should stop tearing. V'yesh tikva lach hariseich, there'll be hope in the end. Nu'um Hashem, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, v'shavu vonim ligvulam, and your children will come home. Beautiful, beautiful words. Rachel Imenu sees her reality. She accepts it, but she deals with it. She confronts it, and she pleads with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and does whatever she can to influence and improve her reality. That is the precedent from whom we learn. We don't learn from Aim Sisra, who creates this alternative reality, this totally warped alternative reality. We don't learn from Hagar, who sees her reality with clarity, but is paralyzed with fear and can't do anything about it. But we learn from Rachel Imenu, who sees her reality, who confronts it, who deals with it, and does whatever she can to influence and to improve her own reality. And it worked. It worked because the pasuk says, Yesh tikva lachariseich num Hashem v'shavu bonim ligvulam. That is something we see with our own eyes. I've been in shuls on a few occasions where a person in Eretz Yisrael, I was privileged to be there, and a person has made aliyah that week. He gets called up for an aliyah l'Torah on that Shabbos, the first Shabbos he's there in Eretz Yisrael, and the whole tzibur starts singing V'shavu vonim ligvulam. After 2,500 years of the Novi saying these words, we're seeing the fulfillment in our own generation. We're living in times which is really a huge turning point in Jewish history, where the majority of Jewish people, the majority of Klal Yisrael, are now living in Eretz Yisrael. There are approximately 14, 15 million Jews in the world today, and approximately 8 million Jews living in Eretz Yisrael. We've come to that tipping point in Jewish history where the majority of Klal Yisrael are living in Eretz Yisrael. This is really, we're heading l'chora to a kiyum of these words of Yirmiyah HaNovi. But the lesson of Rachel Imenu is, the precedent is, that we see what the reality is. We deal with it, and we try and improve it as much as we can. Let me share with you the following anecdote. This is a true story that came about soon after October the 7th. Maybe you're familiar with it. Yotam Chaim and 2 other Israeli hostages, if you remember, were shot dead sadly by the IDF as they tried to reach freedom after troops mistook them for Hamas operatives on the 15th of December 2023 in Gaza City. A tragic era where Nebuch, Yotam and 2 other Israeli hostages were killed by our own. While sitting Shiva, the wife of one of the officers of the soldiers who shot them came to visit family Chaim. She told the mother, Iris, the mother of Yotam, that the morale in the army was extremely low because they had killed hostages they had come to save, and the soldiers couldn't continue to fight. Iris Chaim said to her, "What do you mean they can't continue fighting? They must continue fighting, otherwise what will become of us? What will become of Israel? I want to talk to them." Iris then recorded a message for the soldiers which said, and I quote, "Hello, this is Iris Chaim. I'm Yotam's mother. I wanted to tell you that I love you very much, and I'm sending you my hugs from afar. I know that everything that happened isn't your fault. It's no one's fault except Hamas's. At the first opportunity, you are invited to come to our home. Anyone can come. We want to see you with our own eyes, to hug you and to tell you that you did what you had to do. As much as it hurts to say such a sad thing, it was the only thing you could do. It was probably right in the moment. And none of us are judging you. Not me, not my husband Raviv, and not my daughter Noya, not Yotam, may his memory be blessed, not Toval, Yotam's brother. We love you very much." Mika Amcha Yisrael. That this is the precedent set by Rachel Imenu. We don't deny the reality. We don't create an alternative warped reality like Aim Sisra. We don't sit back and we're not paralyzed with fear like Hagar. But we try and confront the reality, influence and improve it. And we do whatever we can. We do whatever we can to try and improve the situation, each one of us, in these powerful, auspicious days of the Yom Niroim, whether it's tefillah, whether it's saying Tehillim, whether it's doing chesed, each of us to do things which can improve the reality of the situation. I remember I was in Eretz Yisrael for Sukkot 2 years ago, had the zchus of being there, and I was there on October the 7th. Took a while to get back to London eventually, but then when we did get back, I remember I've got 2 brothers living in Eretz Yisrael. I called one of them, and as I do regularly, and I said, ask him what's news, what are you up to? So he told me he's driving back cars from the south. This was in the days, maybe a week or 2 after October the 7th. I said, what do you mean driving cars back from the south? What he was doing was, with many other very selfless individuals, they were running down to the south, a car of 4 or 5 men, and they were getting the cars back. Which cars? You see, on that fateful day, hundreds and hundreds of cars came down to help the situation. Their phones went off. It was pikuach nefesh. They ran in their cars down south to be involved. But they were kept, and they kept fighting. They were in the army. They couldn't get back because they were now fighting for the next weeks and months ahead. But their cars were stuck down south, and their wives and their families needed the family car. So many, my brother and others, went down south and rode us backwards and forwards, driving cars back up to Cholon and to Yerushalayim and to Tel Aviv and to Sfas and to wherever. Backwards and forwards. Everyone was confronting that reality and doing what they could to improve the situation. What chesed and what remarkable things we've seen since those fateful days. I want to finish with this. That one small act, whether it's davening, whether it's a chesed, whether it's saying Tehillim, whether it's kind, being sensitive, whether it's interacting well with other people, causing a Kiddush Hashem, we should never ever underestimate the power of one act. Let me close with one remarkable story. I heard this, I think it was from Pesach Kron, I forget exactly. Michigan has proportionately the largest Muslim population in the United States. It boasts the largest mosque in Northern America. And yet, the Detroit Free Press is always very supportive of Israel. And it's a strange thing really, because normally the paper leans towards your clientele, your advertising base, and this bucks the trend of demonizing Israel. So how come Michigan, which has the largest Muslim population in the world, in the United States, the local paper, the Detroit Free Press, is generally very supportive of Israel? Why is that? So listen to this remarkable story. At the yeshiva dinner of the Beis Yehuda in Detroit many decades ago, the guest of honor was a Supreme Court judge. He was there. He was honored in this particular yeshiva's dinner. The guest speaker of the day was the great Rabbi Zatzal, sadly just recently passed away. And the Supreme Court judge was there when Rabbi Berawine spoke, and he was very impressed with Rabbi Berawine, who wasn't. And he was so impressed that he invited Rabbi Wine for a small intimate dinner party in his house where he would have a few people, and he kashered the kitchen, and he made sure everything was kosher. And he invited Rabbi Wine and a few others. Also there was the editor of the Detroit Free Press. And they were sitting there at the dinner table. And the editor of the Detroit Free Press said to Rabbi Wine, he said, "Tell me, Rabbi, are you an Orthodox rabbi? What type of rabbi are you?" So Rabbi Wine says, "Yes, I'm Orthodox." So the editor of the Detroit Free Press said, "Let me tell you about the one Orthodox rabbi I knew." Rabbi Wine recalls that he didn't know what to think, what's going to come. But it was good. The editor of the Detroit Free Press told him the following. In the years after the war, Second World War, there was an Irish woman who moved from Ireland to the United States. She came without a husband. She had one son, and she became a cleaner in a place called Oak Park in Michigan. And she happened to be working for the rabbi of that community, the rabbi in Oak Park in Michigan. In the winter of 1947, the family went on vacation, and they offered the cleaner to stay in their house. The family came back on the 25th of December 1947, and as the rabbi came back, he drove back with his wife and family in the car, he couldn't believe his eyes, because his house was decorated with festive decorations, and he saw lights and decorations, and he couldn't understand what was going on. He drove around the block again. Maybe this isn't my house, but it was his house. What had happened was that this Irish cleaner was very close and felt very close to the rabbi and his family, was very appreciative to him. And she figured that they're coming back on the 25th of December. They won't have time to decorate their house. Surely everyone decorates their house. So she went out and she bought and she spent the little money that she had to decorate, to buy a tree and to put lights and decorations. The rabbi walked in, and the cleaner, before the Rav could say anything, said, "I'm so sorry. I realized you're coming back on December the 25th. I realized that you wouldn't be able to decorate your house, and I was so sad for you, so I went to the store, and with a little of the $10 that I had, I bought as much as I could." What would you do as the Rav in that situation? The Rav took her to another room and explained that he was so grateful for her sensitivity and her thoughtfulness and her kindness, but the congregation will think that either he's gone mad or he's converted to Christianity, and either way, he's going to be out of a job. So he explained to her, "Please, take down the decorations, ASAP, but I don't want you to think that I'm upset with you. And to express my gratefulness for your sensitivity and your kindness, I want to give you a gift." He went to his wallet and he took out $100. 1947, that was worth something. And he gave her $100. The editor of the Detroit Free Press said, "That Irish cleaning lady was my mother." And we never forgot how this rabbi behaved to us. Decades later, the families always sort of stayed in touch. In fact, they used to eat occasionally in each other's homes. And as a result of that, I made a decision when I became the editor of this large newspaper, never to demonize Israel, because after all, that's the place where Jews live. And I took upon myself a certain editorial standard that as a result, millions of people have been affected positively towards Israel and have been spared the hatred and bias that is sadly so prevalent. Why? Because one Jew treated a non-Jewish woman with extraordinary sensitivity and respect. We should never underestimate the power of one act. We have to accept and confront our reality, but improve it and influence it in the best way that we can. Wishing everyone a ksiva v'chasima tova, a gebench jar, and besuras tovas, personally, individually, and for the whole of Klal Yisrael.